The Forgotten Debt. The Galactic Council chamber was a vast circle of stone and steel, filled with voices that carried pride and arrogance. Representatives of dozens of alien races filled the seats, their banners glowing, their translators whispering, in hundreds of tongues. For centuries, this hall had been the center of power in the galaxy. No decision was final until it passed through here. Most of the time, humanity was ignored in this chamber. The Terrans were seen as young, stubborn, and too emotional to matter. Other empires called them a death world race born from a planet too violent for comfort. But tonight something was different. The human delegation walked into the chamber slowly, dressed not in bright uniforms but in dark, simple coats. Their leader, Ambassador Rourke, stood taller than most species, his face hard, his voice calm, but filled with steel. He carried no weapon, but every eye followed him as though he did. When he reached the center, the council chamber grew quiet. Esteemed members of the council, Rourke began, his voice echoing across the dome. I come to remind you of a promise made long ago, a promise written into your very laws, a debt that the galaxy owes to my people. The aliens stirred. Some laughed, some looked confused. A few frowned and searched through their digital tablets, whispering to aides. A six-eyed representative of the Zelthari leaned forward, sneering. Debt? What debt could the galaxy possibly owe to humans? Rourke's gaze never shifted. Centuries ago, the Kryn Empire faced extinction. Their homeworld was burning, their fleets shattered, their children dying in the cold of space. The council debated but did nothing. It was humanity, weak, poor, young humanity that sent its ships. We brought food, medicine, and soldiers. We spilled Terran blood on worlds not our own. He paused, letting the silence grow heavy. Your laws said any race that saved another from extinction would be owed repayment. That promise was written into the charter of the council itself. Whispers ran like fire through the chamber. Some remembered. Most had forgotten. The younger species had never even heard of it. A representative of the Vulcar, their insectoid wings clicking, hissed. Ancient history. Those were different times. The debt was ceremonial only. Rourke's lips tightened. No. The charter said repayment was eternal. Humanity never asked for payment before. We never demanded tribute. But now, the time has come. We ask for what was promised. The chamber erupted. Some aliens shouted, their voices sharp and furious. Others muttered, with unease. The Kryn representative, gray-skinned and silent, lowered his head. Shame glimmered in his eyes. From the high seat, the Speaker of the Council slammed his staff against the floor. Silence, humanity. Do you bring demands to this chamber? Rourke's eyes narrowed. We bring only truth. The debt exists. And debts must be paid. A mocking laugh filled the chamber. The Aurak warlord, scales shining under the light, stood tall. You dare lecture us. Humanity is nothing. Your fleets are small. Your colonies are weak. If you press this claim, you will be crushed. But the laughter did not last long, because Rourke did not flinch. Instead, he slowly raised his hand, pressing a small control on his wrist. The chamber lights dimmed, and above them, the hollow projector roared to life. The image was not of battles or speeches. It was of ships, human ships. Rows upon rows of massive war vessels, sleek and dark, their cannons glowing like the eyes of predators in the night. Fleets gathered near the edges of alien territories, silent, waiting. Gasps filled the air. Some council members leaned back in shock. Others froze in fear. These were not the small Terran fleets they remembered. This was power, quiet power, waiting to be unleashed. Rourke's voice cut through the silence. For centuries, we held our peace. We built our strength while you mocked us. We never asked for repayment. But now the galaxy must decide. Will it honor its word, or will it face the consequences of breaking it? The Aurak warlord's scales lost their shine. The Vulcar's wings fell silent. Even the Zelthari, so quick to sneer, now stared with wide, uncertain eyes. The Kryn representative finally rose, his voice trembling. It is true. Humanity saved us when no one else would. Without them, the Kryn would not exist today. We owe them everything. The chamber erupted again, but this time it was not arrogance. It was fear. Some shouted that the humans were bluffing. Others whispered that if the Terrans truly had such fleets, the galaxy would tremble. Ambassador Rourke gave them no comfort. He simply bowed his head slightly and spoke one final line before leaving the chamber. Repay the debt. Or tremble in fear. The choice is yours. And with that, the human delegation turned and walked out, leaving silence and fear in their wake. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council felt something it had never felt before from humanity. Not weakness. Not stubbornness, but power, and the shadow of a debt that could shake the galaxy itself. Shadows of the past. The Galactic Council did not sleep that night. Across the halls of power, whispers echoed like storms behind closed doors. The human ambassadors' words had cut deep, reopening an old wound the galaxy had long tried to forget. In the archives beneath the council chambers, ancient records were pulled from dust-covered vaults. Old treaties sealed by species long extinct glowed in the cold light of holoscreens. There it was, clear and undeniable. The Terran claim was real. The debt existed. 1,000 years ago, the Kryn Empire had stood on the edge of annihilation. Their fleets broken, their worlds burning. And it was not the great empires of the galaxy that saved them. No, those mighty civilizations had turned away, unwilling to risk their fleets. It had been the humans. Weak, poor, desperate humans who still dared to send their small armadas into fire. Thousands of Terran lives were lost on alien soil, protecting Kryn cities that no one else would defend. And for that, the Council had written a law, a promise of eternal repayment. Not gold, not tribute, but loyalty, aid, and recognition whenever humanity called. The promise had been buried by time. Until now, inside the Chamber of Records, a council aide whispered to his master, a tall, cold-eyed Valar noble. It is true, Excellency. The law is binding. If the humans press the claim, we must honor it. The noble sneered. No law binds. Power. Humanity has grown arrogant. They wave scraps of history at us and expect us to kneel? He waved his clawed hand at the hollow screen of Terran warships. They are bluffing. Their fleets cannot be as strong as they appear. They are Deathworlders. Yes, but they lack unity. They always have. Yet his words rang hollow even to himself, because he remembered the look in the ambassador's eyes. Calm. Certain. A man who did not bluff. Meanwhile, in the private quarters of the Kryn delegation, silence weighed heavy. Chancellor Vera of the Kryn stood by her window, staring into the void of space. Behind her, her advisors whispered nervously. They will come for us first, one muttered. They saved us. We never repaid, said another. We cannot repay. The debt is too large. Vera closed her eyes. Her people still carried shame from that ancient war. Every Kryn child was taught that survival had come not from their own strength, but from the blood of strangers. From humans. Now those strangers had returned stronger than ever. And they were collecting. In the Aurak war camp, the warlord who had mocked humanity smashed his table in fury. Terran arrogance. They cannot demand repayment. We owe them nothing. Nothing! But even as he roared, his generals shifted uneasily. Reports had already reached them. Entire human fleets stationed silently at border systems, not firing, not attacking, only waiting, like predators circling prey. One general dared to speak. My lord, if their fleets are as strong as the images show, then perhaps... The warlord's eyes blazed. Enough. Humanity is nothing. We will crush them before their debt poisons the galaxy. Yet even he could not silence the tremor in his own claws. In a dark corner of the galaxy, far from the council's halls, a different kind of conversation began. Small races, minor worlds with no armies, whispered with hope. Humanity's words had stirred something inside them. The Terrans demand repayment, one said. Yes, another whispered, but they also promise justice. They demand honor where others have broken it. Perhaps humanity is not to be feared. Perhaps they are the ones who will finally break the Council's arrogance. The galaxy was divided, fear on one side, hope on the other. And humanity stood at the center, silent, watching. Back on Earth, the human fleets prepared. Admiral Corrin stood aboard the Titan-class battleship Resolute. His crew moved with quiet efficiency, their faces calm but determined. Before him, through the massive view window, hundreds of Terran warships hung in the void, engines dark, weapons asleep. He knew the Council was scrambling. He knew they would argue, deny, resist. But none of that mattered. Humanity had waited long enough. The Admiral turned to his second officer. Are the fleets in position? Yes, sir. Border sectors secured. Colonies reinforced. They are watching us with fear. Corrin's lips curved into a cold smile. Good. Let them fear. Fear will remind them of what they owe. In the Council chamber the next morning, chaos reigned. Some demanded to pay the debt immediately, to give humanity whatever they asked for. Others shouted to resist, to crush the Terrans before they grew stronger. The speaker tried to maintain order, his staff pounding again and again, but the voices grew louder, angrier, more divided. And then, suddenly, a message flashed across every screen in the chamber. It was simple. A single transmission from humanity sent to every world, every empire, every leader in the galaxy. The words were few, but they struck like thunder. The debt is real. The time has come. Repay or tremble. The chamber fell silent. No one dared speak, because in their hearts, they knew the truth. The shadows of the past were rising, and this time, humanity would not be ignored. The gathering storm, the galaxy, was no longer calm. In the days after humanity's broadcast, fear spread like fire across the stars. Entire governments called emergency meetings. Fleets were scrambled to borders. Spies rushed to gather information about Terran movements, and everywhere the same question was whispered in fear. How strong are the humans really? On the trade routes of the Helion cluster, the first answer arrived. A convoy of 12 merchant ships protected by 3 battlecruisers of the Volcar Empire drifted through the void. Their cargo holds were filled with fuel and weapons. For centuries, Volcar trade had moved freely, unchallenged. But this time their path was blocked. One Terran ship hung alone in the darkness, silent and motionless. It was not large compared to the Volcar cruisers, yet it radiated menace. The ship's black hull reflected no light, its cannons glowing faintly like the eyes of a beast waiting to strike. The Volcar commander laughed when he saw it. One human, vessel against 3 of mine? Fools. They mean to bluff. He ordered his fleet to advance. The Terran ship did not move. Instead, a single message cut through the comms, its voice calm and sharp. The debt is due. This route is closed until it is repaid. The Volcar commander sneered. Open fire! Cannons lit the void. Explosions ripped across space, blinding flashes lighting the stars. But when the fire cleared, the Terran ship still floated there, its shields glowing unharmed. Then the human vessel moved. Its cannons roared like thunder, a single barrage tearing one Volcar cruiser apart in seconds. Another barrage crippled the second. The third tried to flee, engines burning. But the human ship stayed on its tail, weapons ready, and then it stopped. The Terran commander's voice returned, colder than before. Go, tell your masters. The Terrans do not bluff. The last Volcar cruiser limped away, broken and humiliated. The convoy's cargo was left behind, seized by humanity, as partial repayment. The story spread within hours. The galaxy trembled. In the council chambers, panic erupted once more. They block our trade, shouted the Volcar representative, his wings thrashing with rage. They attacked without provocation, cried the Aurak warlord. They warned us, whispered the Kryn chancellor softly. We ignored them, the speaker of the council. Demanded calm, but his voice was lost in the storm. Some called for war. Others whispered that resistance would be suicide. For the first time in history, the mighty council was divided beyond repair. Meanwhile, humanity remained silent. Admiral Corrin received reports aboard the Resolute. More ships had arrived at border worlds. Terran war fleets positioned themselves near choke points and trade lanes. They did not attack unless provoked. But when they did act, they were merciless and precise. To the galaxy, it looked like preparation for invasion. To humanity, it was only a reminder. Corrin studied the stars from his command deck, hands clasped behind his back. His officers waited for orders, but he spoke only one line. Let them see our strength. Let fear do the work. On a small frontier world of the Neron Republic, fear was already spreading. The local governor watched in horror as a massive Terran battleship descended into orbit. No shots were fired, no threats made. The ship only broadcast a single message planet-wide. Repay your debt. Humanity remembers. Markets collapsed. Citizens panicked. Armies froze, unsure whether to fight or submit. The governor sent desperate messages to the council for help, but none came, because in system after system, the same thing was happening. Human fleets appeared. Human voices demanded repayment. And then they waited. The galaxy realized something terrifying. Humanity did not need to conquer. They only needed to stand and be seen. Fear was their greatest weapon. Back in the Kryn Palace, Chancellor Vera gathered her advisors. The humans are awakening the storm, one said nervously. They will bring the council to its knees, said another. Vera nodded slowly. Perhaps that is what we deserve. Perhaps the debt must be paid in full, no matter the cost. Her words carried the weight of truth, because in her heart, she knew. The galaxy's arrogance had buried the promise for too long, and now humanity had returned to collect. In the shadows, the Aurak warlord plotted war. They will not scare us into submission, he growled. If humanity wants repayment, we will repay them with fire. His fleets gathered in secret, preparing for an attack. He believed war was the only answer. He believed humanity was bluffing. But deep in his chest, even as he shouted, even as his armies cheered, a cold doubt grew. Because the storm was gathering, and no one, not even the Aurak, knew if the galaxy could survive it. First, repayment. The galaxy reached a breaking point. Every empire argued. Every council chamber filled with shouting. Some demanded war against humanity, while others whispered that war would only end in disaster. The humans had shown their fleets, and already one empire's pride had been shattered. But then, something unexpected happened. One race finally stepped forward. On the crystalline world of Thylus, home of the Eliari Confederation, the High Chancellor called for a broadcast to all systems. His people were traders, not warriors. Their fleets were small, their defenses weak. They had survived for centuries by staying neutral, avoiding conflict and paying tribute to stronger empires. Now faced with humanity's demand, the Eliari made a choice. The Chancellor appeared on the holoscreen, his voice calm but heavy. Long ago, the galaxy made a promise. Humanity saved one of our own. That debt was written into law. We cannot deny it. We will repay what is owed. Gasps spread across the council chambers. Some shouted betrayal. Others were silent, knowing the truth. The Eliari then announced the first repayment. They would open their trade routes to humanity exclusively. Their vast merchant fleets would carry Terran goods across the galaxy, and half their yearly wealth would be given to Earth. It was not gold. It was not blood. It was loyalty. When the message reached Earth, Ambassador Rourke only nodded. One has remembered, the rest will follow. But not everyone agreed. In the Aurak war camp, the warlord roared with fury. Cowards. They kneel to humans and call it repayment? No, we will never submit. His armies cheered his defiance, but many of his generals looked uneasy, because deep inside, they feared the humans would crush them just as easily as the Volcar. Back. In the council chamber, the speaker tried to regain order. The Eliari act alone, he shouted. The council has not decided. But the words meant nothing, because the galaxy had seen what mattered. Repayment had begun. One race had submitted. Others would soon follow. Admiral Corrin stood aboard the Resolute, listening to the reports. The Eliari fleets were now flying Terran banners, carrying human goods across star systems that had once rejected them. Their merchants now spoke of Earth with respect, even reverence. It was a quiet victory, but one that shook the galaxy more than any battle. The Admiral's second officer asked, "Is this what we wanted? Trade? Loyalty? Submission?" Corrin's eyes narrowed. This is only the beginning. Every race must choose, repay or resist, and those who resist will learn the price of breaking a promise. In the streets of alien cities, people argued in fear. Some whispered, "The Eliari are wise. Better to repay than to burn." Others growled, "They have betrayed the galaxy. The humans will enslave us all." Markets collapsed. Armies grew, restless. The ordinary citizens of dozens of empires began to question their leaders, and everywhere the same question spread. If the humans saved the Kryn, if they saved others, do we not owe them as well? The Kryn themselves remained, silent, trapped in shame, but whispers grew louder in their halls. Some said they should repay first as the law demanded. Others feared what humanity might demand if they admitted the truth. Chancellor Vera walked her palace halls at night, unable to sleep. She remembered the ancient stories, the Terrans who had died to save her people. The blood spilled not for conquest, but for mercy. And she knew. Her people's silence was another betrayal. But silence would not last, because across the Aurak borders, fleets began to gather. The warlord who had mocked humanity could no longer endure the Eliari's example. To him, repayment was weakness. To him, humanity's demand was an insult to Aurak pride. And so, in secret, he prepared his armies. Warships filled their docking bays. Soldiers trained in brutal drills. Weapons of mass destruction were loaded onto carriers. The warlord snarled to his council, "If the humans want repayment, we will give it to them in blood. Aurak blood, Terran blood, all the blood the galaxy can spill." His generals saluted. But none of them dared say what they were all thinking, that humanity might be more than the Aurak could handle. In the council chamber, the speaker received a hidden transmission. It was from an Aurak informant, his voice low and desperate. "The warlord gathers fleets. He means to strike the humans first. He thinks he can scare them back into silence." The speaker froze. If humanity was attacked, the galaxy would burn. But it was already too late, because the storm had begun. And this time repayment would not come through gold, or trade, or loyalty. This time, first repayment. The galaxy was at the edge of chaos. For weeks, every council meeting had ended in shouting. Some demanded war against humanity, while others whispered that war would mean extinction. Humanity's fleets were everywhere, silent and waiting. Their message was clear: repay or tremble. No one wanted to be the first to bend, yet no one wanted to be the first to burn. The Eliari decision. On the shining world of Thales, the Eliari Confederation gathered their leaders. The Eliari were traders, not soldiers. Their crystal cities depended on peace, and their fleets were too small to fight even a minor war. They had survived for centuries by bowing when necessary and trading when possible. Now they had a choice: resist the Terrans or honor the debt. High Chancellor Sereth stood before his council. His skin glimmered like glass under the chamber. Lights, his voice soft but steady. "We can no longer pretend the debt does not exist," he said. "The humans demand repayment. If we resist, we will be crushed. If we repay, we may survive." Some of his ministers shouted betrayal. "The galaxy will see us as weak," Others whispered fearfully, "The humans already are strong." Finally, the Chancellor lifted his hand. "Better to be remembered as those who honored their word than as those who died with pride." Decision was made. The Eliari would repay. The broadcast that evening. The Eliari broadcast across every major channel in the galaxy. Centuries ago, the Terrans saved a dying race. A debt was promised in return. We, the Eliari Confederation, will not deny it. Today we begin repayment. Half our trade wealth will be given to Earth. Our merchant fleets will serve Terran needs. And when called, Eliari ships will stand beside human fleets. The galaxy froze. The council chamber erupted in chaos. "The Eliari are cowards," shouted the Aurak warlord. "They bend to Death Worlders for scraps of protection," hissed the Volcar representative. But others were silent, staring at the floor, because deep inside they knew the Eliari had done what the law required. The first repayment had been made. The human response on Earth, Ambassador Rourke, received the message. He read it silently, then gave a small nod. One has remembered. "The others will follow," he said. His staff asked nervously, "Is this enough? Do we accept their trade, their wealth?" Rourke's gaze was sharp. "This is not about gold or cargo. It is about loyalty. If one bows, the rest must choose. Kneel or resist." And he sent a short reply to the Eliari Chancellor. "Your repayment is accepted. Stand with us, and you will not stand alone." The Aurak's fury news of the Eliari's submission reached the Aurak war camps like a blade to the heart. The warlord who had once mocked humanity slammed his fist against a steel wall, cracking it in rage. "Traitors, they kneel to humans as if they are gods," he roared. His soldiers shouted in agreement, their voices echoing like thunder. But not all shared his fury. Some generals exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen the Terran fleets. They had heard the Volcar survivors. Deep down, they feared the humans could not be stopped. Yet the warlord refused to listen. "If repayment means loyalty, then the Aurak will repay in war. We will repay with fire and blood." His fleets began to gather in secret. The council divides back. In the council chamber, the speaker tried desperately to hold order. "The Eliari have acted alone," he cried. "The council has not agreed." But his words rang hollow, because the galaxy had seen something more powerful than speeches. It had seen an empire kneel. Some now whispered that perhaps the humans only sought justice, not conquest. Others warned that once repayment began, humanity would never stop demanding more. The chamber was divided like never before. The calm. Before the storm aboard, the Titan-class battleship Resolute, Admiral Corrin studied the galaxy map. Red marks lit up Aurak borders where fleets were massing. Blue lines traced the new Eliari trade routes now protected under Terran authority. His second officer asked, "Is this what we wanted, Admiral? Trade? Loyalty? Submission?" Corrin's expression was cold. "This is what we demanded, repayment. But not all will choose as the Eliari did. Some will pay with ships, some with fear, and some with blood." He turned back to the window where stars glittered like 1,000 silent witnesses. The war is coming, and when it begins, the galaxy will finally learn what repayment means. The galaxy held its breath. One race had repaid. One warlord sharpened his blades, and humanity waited, silent and unshaken. The first repayment had been made. The storm was next. The war ignites. The galaxy did not wait long for blood. The Aurak warlord, furious at the Eliari's submission, unleashed his fleets. Thousands of warships rose from his fortress worlds, engines blazing like fire across the void. His commanders swore the first strike would prove humanity's weakness. His people cheered war songs that rattled the steel walls of their ships. The Aurak were ready to repay the debt, but with destruction. The first strike, at the edge of Terran space, the Aurak armada fell upon a small colony world called Havens Reach. It was a quiet planet, home to farms, traders, and children. For centuries, the Aurak believed humans would never risk defending such an unimportant place. They were wrong. As the Aurak ships descended, the colony's skies turned red with fire. Buildings shook. Sirens screamed. Civilians ran for shelters, praying for protection. The Aurak commander sent a single message before the attack. Repayment denied. Humanity dies tonight. His fleet opened fire, but before the destruction could spread, the void split open. Terran warships emerged from hyperspace, dark as shadows, massive as mountains. The Resolute led them, its Titan-class guns glowing brighter than the suns themselves. The first human volley struck like a hammer. Entire Aurak squadrons were erased in seconds. Their formations broke. Panic rippled through their ranks. The humans had been waiting. The Battle of Haven's Reach. The Aurak commander roared in rage, demanding his fleets fight on. He believed numbers would overwhelm the humans. But every maneuver he ordered fell apart. Terran ships moved like predators, their tactics sharp and precise. Their weapons cut through Aurak shields like paper. Their smaller vessels darted between. Heavy cruisers targeting engines, slicing formations apart. Civilians on Haven's Reach watched from bunkers as the sky burned with streaks of fire. Children cried, mothers prayed, and fathers clenched fists. But through the chaos, a different sound soon rose: cheers. Because above them, humanity was not falling. Humanity was fighting back. The battle lasted hours, but its outcome was never in doubt. By dawn, the Aurak fleet was broken. Half their ships destroyed, the rest fleeing into the void. The Terrans did not pursue. They only sent one message, carried across every comm in the sector. The debt will be paid. Resistance is suicide. The galaxy reacts. News of Haven's Reach spread faster than light. Across the council, leaders who once mocked humanity now sat pale and silent. The Volcar representative, who had once sneered at the Terrans, whispered nervously to his aides, "If they can destroy an Aurak fleet so easily, what chance do we have?" The speaker slammed his staff in desperation. "We must stop this war before the galaxy burns." But his words carried no strength, because everyone knew the truth. The war had already begun. The Aurak's shameback on the Aurak homeworld. The warlord stood in silence as reports flooded in. His fleets shattered, his generals dead, his soldiers scattered. For the first time, his people looked at him not with fear but with doubt. Whispers spread through his halls. Perhaps the Terrans are too strong. Perhaps repayment cannot be refused. The warlord roared in fury, vowing to rebuild, but deep inside, fear gnawed at him. The humans had not just won. They had humiliated him. The Kryn's guilt. Meanwhile, the Kryn Chancellor Vera watched the reports with tears in her eyes. "This is our fault," she whispered to her advisors. "They saved us once, and now they are forced to fight again because we failed to honor the debt." Her ministers begged her to stay silent, but the guilt was heavy. She knew her people could not hide forever. Humanity would come for them too, and when they did, the Kryn would have no excuses left. The Terran resolve aboard the Resolute. Admiral Corrin stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the Aurak wreckage drifting through the void. His officers looked to him for guidance, their faces tired but proud. "Is it over?" one asked. The Admiral shook his head. "No, this was only the first repayment. The galaxy has chosen war. Now we will show them the cost." He turned to his crew, voice hard as steel. "Signal the fleet. Prepare for full mobilization. Humanity will not wait for the Council to decide. We will collect what is owed, piece by piece, world by world." The bridge fell silent. Then, one by one, the officers saluted, because they all knew the truth. The war had ignited, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Fear across the stars. The Battle of Haven's Reach changed everything. For the first time in centuries, an Aurak fleet had been shattered, their warlord humiliated, their pride broken. The galaxy had expected humanity to fall. Instead, the humans had risen higher than anyone imagined, and now fear spread like wildfire across the stars. The panic on the capital worlds of a dozen empires. Citizens whispered in fear. In markets, traders closed their stalls early. In taverns, soldiers spoke in hushed tones. The humans destroyed an Aurak armada. They didn't even chase the survivors. They didn't need to. They are not asking. They are commanding. Entire governments trembled. Leaders who once mocked humanity now held sleepless nights, staring at star maps, wondering if Terran fleets already circled their borders. The Aurak's silence. The Aurak warlord locked himself in his fortress halls, refusing all messages. His pride had been his strength, but now it was his prison. His people looked at him with doubt instead of loyalty. Some generals whispered of rebellion, others of surrender. None dared say it aloud, but all knew. The humans had shown the galaxy that the Aurak were not invincible. The mighty predators had become prey. The council's collapse, in the Galactic Council chamber, the speaker's staff pounded again and again, but no order came. Humanity must be stopped, cried the Volcar representative. They demand repayment. It is lawful, argued the Kryn chancellor softly. Law means nothing if their fleets rule the stars, shouted another. The chamber broke into chaos. Fists slammed, voices clashed. Alliances cracked apart. For the first time, the council's unity shattered. Some demanded war, others begged for peace, and still the humans gave no answer. They waited in silence, their fleets unmoving, their demand unchanged. Repay the debt. The Terran message on Earth, Ambassador Rourke, stood before the cameras of 1,000 species. His voice was calm, his words sharp. Humanity does not seek conquest. Humanity does not seek tribute. We only ask what was promised. Repayment, loyalty, honor. Those who resist will be treated as enemies. Those who repay will stand under our shield. The message was carried across the galaxy, and it struck deeper than any fleet ever could, because it gave the galaxy a choice. And choices made in fear are always dangerous. The first kneelings. Soon, smaller empires began to bow. The Eliari had already pledged trade and wealth. Now the Siren hives offered soldiers, their insectoid warriors sworn to march under human banners. The Tavari League promised shipyards, building Terran designs with alien hands. Every repayment made humanity stronger. Every bow deepened the fear of those who resisted. The Kryn's burden in the Kryn Palace, Chancellor Vera could no longer stay silent. She stood before her council, her voice trembling. It was humanity that saved us. We live today because they bled for us. We owe them more than words, we owe them everything. Her ministers protested. If we admit it, the galaxy will hate us. They will call us slaves to the Terrans. But Vera shook her head. Better. A slave to justice than a coward to history. Her message was sent secretly to Earth. And when Rourke read it, he smiled grimly. Humanity's first allies were gathering. The seeds of rebellion, but not all bent their knees. In the shadows, the Aurak plotted revenge. The Volcar whispered alliances of resistance. Hidden fleets began to gather in secret, empires uniting not to honor humanity, but to strike against them together. Repayment is slavery, one alien lord snarled. Better to burn in war than live under Terran shadow. Plans of rebellion spread, but they spread in fear, and fear always left cracks. The human fleets aboard the Resolute, Admiral Corrin stood before the galaxy map. New allies had been marked in green, enemies glowed in red, and everywhere, Terran fleets were stationed, waiting silently. His officers waited for his order. Do we strike now? One asked. Not yet, Corrin said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were cold. Fear is our greatest weapon. Let them feel it longer. Let them divide themselves. When they finally choose war, we will be ready. He looked out at the stars, whispering a final line only to himself. The galaxy trembles. Good. It should. Fear had spread across the stars. But fear alone was never enough, because soon the galaxy would choose, and humanity was ready for either answer. The debt fulfilled, the galaxy stood at a crossroads. On one side were those who had bent the knee. The Eliari gave trade, the Siren. Hives gave soldiers. The Kryn finally admitted the truth, that without humanity, they would have been dust. On the other side were those who still resisted. The Aurak warlord rebuilt his fleets in secret. The Volcar whispered rebellion. Others plotted in shadows, convinced that humanity's rise must be stopped before it swallowed them all. But the galaxy's time for indecision was over. Humanity came to collect. The Council's final session. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full, nor so divided. Armies stood on alert across every border. Spies carried lies and truths alike through the corridors of power. The speaker raised his staff, but no order came. His voice cracked as he said, "We are at war with ourselves. Humanity's claim has broken the Council." Then, the chamber, doors opened. The human delegation entered once more. Ambassador Rourke walked slowly to the center, his coat as dark as the void, his eyes sharp as steel. Behind him were no guards, no weapons, only silence. He looked at the Council and spoke calmly. "The time has ended. Repayment is due. Those who stand with us will have our shield. Those who defy us will have our fire. Choose now." The chamber erupted in shouting. Some races swore loyalty on the spot. Others screamed defiance. The Aurak warlord snarled from his seat, "We will never kneel to you, Terran." Rourke only nodded. "Then you will be the first to fall." The Aurak's fallout began within days. Terran fleets descended upon the Aurak warworlds. Titan-class warships blocked out their suns, their cannons burning like the wrath of gods. The Aurak fought bravely, their fleets numbering in the thousands. But bravery meant nothing against precision. One by one, Aurak planets fell. Cities burned. Fortresses crumbled. Fleets shattered. The warlords' armies screamed their defiance, but their voices were drowned in the thunder of Terran guns. When the warlords' flagship was finally destroyed, the humans did not cheer. They simply transmitted a single message across the galaxy. "Dili Wayne, debt has been paid. In blood." The Aurak Empire was no more. The galaxy bows. The destruction of the Aurak sent shockwaves across the stars. No one doubted humanity now. No one dared. The Volcar quickly sent envoys, swearing repayment in resources and fleets. The smaller empires followed, one by one. Even those who still hated humanity bent under the weight of fear. In the Council, silence reigned. The once proud chamber where humanity had been mocked for centuries now trembled at every Terran word. Ambassador Rourke returned for the final session. "We never asked for tribute," he said. "We never asked for conquest. We asked for honor, for loyalty, for the promise you made when you let us bleed for you. That debt is now fulfilled." He looked around the chamber, his voice cold but steady. "From this day, humanity stands not as a child of the galaxy, but as its equal. You will not forget us again." The Kryn's tears in the Kryn Palace. Chancellor Vera watched the broadcast with tears on her cheeks. Her people were alive because of Terrans long dead. And now, humanity had claimed their place at the center of the stars. She whispered softly, "We should have repaid sooner. Perhaps the galaxy would not tremble now." But she also knew the truth. Humanity had forced the galaxy to remember its promises. And promises broken always came at a price. The new order on Earth. Crowds filled the streets, watching the return of Terran fleets on great holoscreens. The debt was fulfilled. Humanity had risen. Admiral Corrin stood aboard the Resolute, his eyes scanning the stars. His officers asked him quietly, "Is it over?" The Admiral shook his head. "No, the debt is paid, but debts are never the end. They are only the beginning." He turned toward the window, watching as 1,000 Terran ships drifted in silence. "Now," he said, "the galaxy must learn to live with what it created." The Council had mocked humanity. The galaxy had forgotten their sacrifice. But when humans came to collect, the stars trembled, the debt was fulfilled, and the galaxy would never forget again.